Welcome to episode 125 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to share some tips for how you can beat the Sunday night blues. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript, as well as some free resources to help you enjoy teaching more and stop dreading those Monday mornings. I haven't mentioned this since I think probably season 2 or season 3 of the podcast, but I really do want to thank those of you who have left reviews of this podcast on iTunes. Podcast reviews are super important. The more reviews that we have, the more easily discoverable the show will be, and therefore the more teachers will be able to reach and inspire. So please know that I really do appreciate those of you who have left reviews. I read every single one, and I appreciate that feedback so much. Podcasts can be a bit of a lonely practice. I'm just here sitting at a mic, I'm talking to myself. I have no way for you to talk back or to comment. There's not even a like button. So a big way that I measure whether or not these episodes are resonating with you all is by the number of downloads that Truth for Teachers has each month and through what you say in the reviews. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you also for reviewing. Another quick housekeeping kind of note here. It was brought to my attention that iTunes is only allowing the 100 most recent episodes to be available for streaming and downloading. And it's not just my podcast, it seems to be happening to all podcasts. So that means, unfortunately, that most of season 1 of Truth for Teachers is now gone from iTunes. I have zero control over that. But here is what I'm going to do. If you want to hear those old episodes, you still can. They're not gone forever. You just can't get them through the feed in your podcast player anymore. So you'll need to go to truthforteachers.com, and you can access the blog posts for each episode. Every single episode that I do here has a blog post for it. So you can go there and you'll find a podcast player that is embedded in the blog post. So you can either play or download the MP3 right from that episode. It's not an ideal situation because you have to go through one by one, but at least the episodes aren't completely gone. So if you're wanting to revisit the old episodes, they are there at truthforteachers.com. I was really annoyed by this when I first realized that it was happening, but then I started thinking, actually having only my 100 most recent episodes available on iTunes will allow me to go back through some of those early episodes and redo them. There are some really, really good topics in those first 2 seasons, but honestly, I wasn't very good as a podcaster back then. I remember getting on Voxer with my friend Jen Gonzalez of Cult of Pedagogy, and I was so excited that I had produced this podcast, and I shared it with her and sent her the first couple episodes, and I was like, wow, what do you think? What did you think? And she said, it was good, but I thought you would sound more like you. And it was a funny comment because she hears me on Voxer, which is an audio messaging app. So she hears me talking casually. She, sort of gets the more informal side of me. And, what she's saying is the podcast sounded a bit stiff. And I was like, well, I guess that's going to have to come with time. And it does. This is not a skill that I was taught. And the truth is I was really not very comfortable at all with hearing my own voice at that point. I still don't love it, but I've gotten better at it. But those early seasons, I just didn't have the benefit of the years of practice that's come with this. So those early episodes have great content, but I think the delivery is sort of stilted. And also, I think I was overly focused on trying to hit that 15-minute mark exactly. In the early episodes, I was really trying to stick to a specific time frame. And through the surveys that you guys have filled out at truthforteachers.com, you told me that's really not important to you. The longer episodes are fine. And in fact, the ideal length for most of you indicated was between like 20 to 25 minutes. So I feel like I have permission to sort of be a little bit looser with it now. And I think every now and then what I'll do is I'll go back through to one of those old episodes that's not in the podcast feed anymore, and I'll redo the episode. And that's what you're going to hear today. This is a new and hopefully improved version of my second podcast episode ever. And that was on this topic of the Sunday night blues. So I have added some teacher feedback to it from the comments in the original post. There were a number of teachers who left comments on the blog post for this episode, and they gave me some really great input and some ideas that I want to share with you guys too. So I've sort of reworked that original podcast episode. I've expanded on it. I've removed some stuff that felt out of date, and now I'm ready to tackle the topic in a new way. So let's get into that now. the Sunday blues or the Sunday night blues. It's that feeling of not being able to fully relax or really enjoy your weekend because you're thinking about what you need to do or what might happen on Monday. And of course, teachers are not the only people who get the Sunday night blues, but it tends to be really difficult for our profession because, first of all, teaching is a job that's never really done. And second of all, I think it's a problem for us because we care so much. The work that we're doing is so, so important. And we know that the future of kids is on the line. And so we're thinking ahead about all the things that we have to get done and all the things that we wanted to get done and didn't. And it's just a lot of pressure. Now, if you get the Sunday night blues, I want you to know it's really, really normal. And it does not mean that you hate your job. A lot of teachers who love their job still get this sense of anxiety on Sundays. Sometimes it may start at night, sometimes it may start even early in the morning or even Saturday night. You just have this feeling of dread because you're anticipating all the problems ahead. And you might even feel that you're wasting half of your weekend worrying about the week ahead and you're never really getting a break because you're always thinking about school. So I want to give you a few tips to help you relax and help you enjoy that time off and be more productive when you do complete any work that you bring home on the weekends. So first of all, I recommend that you don't leave school on Friday until you've prepared at least a little bit for Monday morning. It can be really tempting to just run out of the classroom as soon as possible before the weekend, but I think you'll find, like I did, that you enjoy your time off a lot more if you know that you've already made Monday's photocopies. You've already set up all the supplies that you need for projects. You know that your classroom is reasonably neat, reasonably organized. You're not going to be walking into a mess on Monday morning. So when you leave school on Friday, knowing that you're not returning to chaos, that's going to go a long way toward giving you some peace over the weekend. You don't have to worry about is the photocopier going to be broken on Monday morning. You've already made those photocopies. Now, a teacher named Daniel left this comment on my original post about this topic. He said, I can personally attest to this first tip. There's nothing like the peace of mind for the weekend when you leave everything ready on Friday evening. You can totally forget about your work during Sunday and come in Monday morning, and it will trigger an epiphany. And oh yeah, when you see the objective and the agenda already written on the board. Now, if you're feeling like staying late on Friday is just not going to work for your schedule, or you're just not going to have the energy on Friday afternoons to prep a little bit for the following week, try this suggestion that a teacher named Justin made. He said, my solution has been to use Thursday to plan for the following week. As a middle school teacher, I know how things are ending for the week well enough, and I don't feel the voice of the weekend calling for me on Thursdays. I have dealt with some anxiety on Thursday mornings, but I get to enjoy Friday, and I truly forget about school for the weekend unless I decide to set aside a couple hours to grade. I wouldn't do it any other way if I had the choice because I need separation for sanity. So if Friday doesn't work for you, Thursday works too. Let's talk about the work that you do need to do at home on the weekends and how that relates to the Sunday blues. Hopefully the goal is that you are able to take back your weekends and not spend a ton of time at home. But there are some tasks that are just better done, I feel like, at home. I always did my long-term lesson planning on Sundays. I would usually set aside one Sunday a month and just spend a couple hours really doing a deep dive. Or maybe report cards are coming up and you need to set aside a big block of time for that. There's going to be times that you need to work at home, and sometimes it's preferable because you can get more uninterrupted time than if you're trying to work in your classroom. So I know that will happen sometimes. And if you are doing work at home over the weekend, my recommendation is that you wait until the morning of that day to decide how much time you're going to allot to schoolwork. I find that if I make a decision in advance, okay, I'm going to spend this whole day on Sunday getting all these lesson plans done, and then life happens, that just creates more stress and anxiety for me. It sets me up to be discouraged for the week ahead. I feel like I'm already behind and Monday morning hasn't even come. So I wait and see what's actually happening on Sunday. Maybe I'm not feeling well, or there's an emergency around the house, or maybe something fun comes up that I don't want to miss. I don't want to put work as my first priority all the time. So I can make a realistic judgment on Sunday mornings about how much I'm really going to be able to get done that day. I can have a target. I can have an idea. Okay, I want to work from, 12 noon until 2 p.m., but I'm not going to really commit to that until that morning. and I make sure that it's actually going to get done. Because then I can feel good about accomplishing what I planned instead of setting this crazy goal that I know is actually not going to happen. You've heard me talk a lot about a list making system and allotting your hours. All of those things are really important, but you've got to be flexible. It's supposed to be a guideline. If you wake up that morning and things are not going to be going according to plan, that's okay. Your list, your to-do list and your schedule don't control you. You control those things. And so that's what truly productive people are doing. They're constantly reevaluating priorities, moving things around, adjusting things for what's happening. So do be flexible with yourself. Don't put all this pressure on yourself and, decide you're going to wake up at 7 a.m. and you're just going to work until it's all done. That is just going to be very stressful for you. And you're not going to end feeling very good about what you got done because there was no boundaries around it. And that's what creates the Sunday night blues, right? Feeling like the work is undone. So you don't want to let everything pile up all week because then you're going to have no choice about how much of your weekend gets dedicated to schoolwork and you'll never get that true break from work. It makes sense that you'd be dreading Monday, right? Because you've been working 7 days straight. So if you can, try to get a little bit more done during the work week so that you can be more flexible on the weekends. Keep in mind that you're going to have to choose an amount of time to work that fits your life. So don't base the amount of time that you spend working on Saturday or Sunday on how much actually needs to be done, because teaching is a never-ending job. There's always going to be something more that you could do. So there's no point in trying to work until it's all finished. You're never going to stop working if you just go until it's all done. So unless you have this special deadline, like report cards are due or something, choose how much of your free time on the weekend you are willing to dedicate to your work. And figure out how you can best structure that time in a way that really fits with your family life. Maybe you can steal 2 hours to work while your little one naps, or maybe you can squeeze in an hour of work before your family wakes up and another hour after they go to bed. Just figure out what's going to make a little dent in your workload, what you can do that will make Monday morning go a little bit more smoothly, and just focus on that amount. I know that it sounds impossible to try to get everything done in just those little bits of time, but it can happen if you make your work time a true work-only period. Never write off a block of time because you think it's too short to get anything done. If you have 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 30 minutes there, that really adds up to a lot if you can sit and really focus during those times and knock some things out. So if you choose to dedicate the hours, let's say you're going to work from 2 to 5 to grade papers, do that wholeheartedly. Really focus on it. Any kind of block of time that you have, no matter how short or how long, do that one thing. Focus completely on work. Don't check Facebook. Don't text your friends. Don't try to watch TV at the same time. I'm speaking from experience here. If you do those things, that will only prolong the amount of time that you perceive yourself as working. And before you know it, the whole day is going to be gone and you're going to be moaning about how all you did was work, when the truth is that you really only worked for an hour or two. So this kind of focus, it can be tough, but I find it's a lot easier for me if I know that I'm going to stick to that time that I allotted in the morning. If I decide in the morning, okay, I'm going to put away the work at 5 p.m., I don't have time to get on social media. And I know that I can go on social media guilt-free afterward. So set work hours for yourself. Don't begin the day Sunday with this mile-long list of tasks and slog through them off and on for the whole entire day. You're going to feel like all you did was work. Set aside a short period of a couple hours max and get things done. Now, in a similar vein, you also need to set a time frame for thinking about school on the weekends, because often the stress of the Sunday night blues doesn't come from doing work on weekends. It comes from thinking about work on weekends. It's really, really hard to turn off that teacher brain. So you can't let your mind constantly wander into the future and run through this never-ending list of things that you need to get done and keep worrying about what the week will hold. You can limit this time by giving yourself a set period for thinking about school. So it could be 5 or 10, maybe 15 minutes, and that's time when you're doing nothing but thinking about the week ahead. You might want to do that while you're going for a walk or while you're in the shower, doing dishes. If you're not a person who feels like you can really sit still and focus, you don't want to have like a list in front of you or anything, go for a walk and just sort of think through these things. Or maybe it is helpful to do it in front of your computer or your planner if you want to take notes. It's up to you. I like to have this short time for thinking in the morning before I begin the day's tasks, and then another short time again for thinking about work at the end to give myself some closure. I like to plan out strategies for dealing with challenging issues, write down any more tasks that I need to complete, maybe move some things around. But just having that time to sort of mentally wrap up the day is really important, and think about anything that I need to think about. I find it really hard to sleep at night if I haven't done that, if I haven't looked at my plan for the week ahead, and if I don't know what I'm doing the next day. I like to know what's on the agenda. For me, that just makes me feel less stressed because it's my chance to move things around or eliminate obligations in advance rather than just waiting until the day of and trying to get myself in gear. So I have a routine for closing out the day where I'm moving any unfinished tasks to later on, and I'm mapping out the following day. And when that time is up, when I'm done with that time that I have set aside for thinking about work and thinking about what's to come in the week ahead, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. I've spent my time working, and I've spent my time kind of mentally preparing and planning, and that's all. I'm cutting off that part of my brain that is thinking about work so that I can be present in other parts of my life. And this is not something that comes naturally. It's not something that I think is intuitive to do. You have to train yourself not to think about school outside of that time that you allotted. Notice that I use the word train. Most of our brains are very undisciplined. We have all these thoughts happening all the time that we think we don't have a lot of control over. But the fact is, you can choose your thoughts, and you can choose what you want to think about and what you don't want to think about. Now, I realize that's a pretty complex topic, and for some people, that's something that is brand new. You've never really thought about it. I've actually written an entire book about this. It's called Awakened: Change Your Mindset to Transform Your Teaching. And in Awakened, I share 4 mental strategies that you can use for dealing with unwanted thoughts. They are dismiss, distract, reject, and replace. That's what you need to do when you're supposed to be relaxing, but your mind keeps returning to all the pressures of teaching. Tell yourself, I am rejecting these thoughts about school because they're not productive. They're not healthy. They're not serving me well. I'm choosing to replace them with the thought that when Monday morning comes, I can trust myself to know what to do. So I don't need to think about it right now. And then distract yourself by doing something more enjoyable, and dismiss any thoughts about school that continue to arise. It will take a while to discipline your mind to stay in the present moment, but each time you do it, you are breaking those unhealthy habits and you're making it easier for you to be more mindful next time. Now, when I shared this in the original podcast episode about this topic, a teacher named Alicia added to this by saying, don't spend time researching or looking at teaching ideas online and on social media. While I've discovered so many great resources that way, I also know that just hanging around and surfing the internet for teaching resources in my free time is not helping me unwind and relax. I love her point because it's so reflective about habits. Are you doing something with your time that is making it harder for you to unwind? That's making it difficult for you to stop thinking about school? You may want to re-examine that habit. I also want to share a comment here that was left on the original blog post for this episode by a teacher named Susan, because I think it's really important to include. Susan wrote, I have found that the right anxiety meds are the only things that keep me from obsessing about school every hour that I'm not there. Unfortunately, it took me 12 years and a trip to the psych ward to figure it out, but I've never felt better. I love my students, and I look forward to teaching them every day. I may occasionally leave work without everything squared away, but now I can go with the flow and not sweat the small stuff anymore. A whole, healthy body and mind are the best thing that I can provide for my students. And a teacher named Karen replied to her and said, Susan, thank you for being brave enough to say this. When anxiety and depression are biochemical in their primary source, the right medication can mean the difference between coping and not coping. I recently discovered that my B12 levels were low enough to warrant treatment, and since treatment commencing, life has been better. So I think those two ladies both made very important points. For some people, the habits around retraining your mind are only part of the equation. I don't want anyone to walk away from this episode feeling like I've said the solution to true clinical anxiety is just stop thinking about things that make you anxious. There is great value in seeking out treatment and getting resources for anxiety, and you don't have to try to overcome it on your own. Now, on the topic of anxiety here, before I share the 7th tip for beating the Sunday blues, I want to let you know about a resource that I've created that might be an additional support for you. It's called Finally Free, the teacher toolkit for conquering anxiety, overwhelm, and the pressure to do more. So this toolkit is a collection of audio resources, and there's a workbook too. And it's created so that you can listen to practical encouragement and reassurance whenever you're facing overwhelm and anxiety related to teaching. And the idea is that over time with practice, it will become easier to retrain your brain to think in ways that finally create freedom from anxiety and overwhelm. Now, I partnered with Dan Tricarico of the Zen Teacher Project to create this toolkit, so it includes some really wonderful trainings from him as well. We created 10 modules in total. There's freedom from guilt, freedom from perfectionism, freedom from worry over students, freedom from comparison. You can go through and complete them in order, like a course if you want to, but we were really intentional about calling it a toolkit because we don't want this to be one more thing that you feel pressure to do and you have anxiety about not keeping up with. So just listen whenever you need to. Listen to whatever thing you're struggling with. And though you do get a PDF version of the transcript, it's all audio-based. So you can just listen during your commute or while exercising or cooking or cleaning, just going about your regular routines. And if you want to check out the first module for free, just go to finallyfreetoolkit.com and you can get that module and learn more about how the toolkit works. Now, the last tip for overcoming the Sunday blues is to give yourself at least one thing to look forward to on Monday. Is there a student who always makes you laugh? Or a fun colleague that you'll have lunch with? Maybe there's a lesson that you particularly enjoy teaching, or a project that you know you'll get to complete. If you can't think of anything to look forward to on Monday, create something. One year, I took turns bringing breakfast to school for a colleague, and we ate together in the classroom on Monday mornings before our workday hours officially started. So whenever I started to feel dread about the weekend ending, I remembered that nice transition into the work week that I had planned, and I stayed focused on that instead of whatever was stressing me out. Here's a few more examples from other teachers who commented on that blog post. Jess said, I used to treat myself every Friday morning with a Starbucks before I got to school. It was sort of a, yay, it's almost the weekend latte. Then I decided to switch that treat to Mondays. It makes Monday mornings just a little bit less daunting. Lachelle says, I try to find something interesting to share with my students, ranging from a YouTube video that relates to our area of study to maybe a song, something over the weekend that I can share with them. That gets me super excited for Monday to be able to tell them about it. And Janet says, most of my department, which is the English department at her school, has sustained silent reading on Mondays for all of our classes. That makes going in on Monday less threatening. It promotes sustained reading, and it gives me my weekends back. I spend about a good 15 minutes modeling reading behavior and the other time of sustained silent reading doing any work that I need to get done to get ready for the week. My students are told ahead of time so they know when I switch gears, and this is for their benefit. Starting off our Monday mornings with independent reading time has been wonderful. I'd like to leave you with a quote that I call the takeaway truth. And this week's quote is from the English actress Hayley Mills. She once said, "Wherever I am in the world, I never get Sunday night blues. I suppose it's because I never worked at any one thing long enough to start hating it." I think that's really insightful because it points to the relationship between dread and the blues and monotony. The Sunday blues tend to be much stronger when we feel stuck in a rut. And that's something we can take control of because if there's one thing I know for sure about teaching, it's that every single day is different. And you never know what's really going to happen. If we embrace that uncertainty and we embrace the unexpected and look forward to it, that's something that we can actually use to help us gear up for the week ahead, be excited about, something that keeps us from feeling bored or burned out. Being open to the unexpected instead of fixating on the aspects of the job that we dislike, that can really make a big difference. When Hayley Mills said that she doesn't get the Sunday blues because she never worked at any one thing long enough to start hating it, I don't think the implication is that we have to flip from job to job. Although transferring to a different grade level or a different school can help if you find that you just can't shake those blues. But for me, the application here to teaching is that often the thing that we dread most about Monday morning or about going back to work is that there's something we've been trying to tackle incessantly for a really long time. Sometimes we become really myopic in our thinking. We get overly focused on that one kid's behavior problem that just drives us nuts every single day, or that one observation that we really need to rock, or that one concept that we really have to get kids to understand. And maybe the solution is to stop working on one thing so long that you start hating it, and instead focus your attention on something else for a while. Give yourself permission to stop thinking about that thing. Stop worrying about that aspect of teaching and trust that the solution will come to you in time. Don't be afraid to switch things up and give yourself something to look forward to on Monday mornings. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Want more than just a weekly podcast episode from me? I'd love to also send you a weekly message of encouragement via email. I'll reach out each Sunday evening with a short message that's designed to help you feel more prepared and inspired and motivated for the week ahead. It's not a newsletter or a bunch of announcements. This goes out to over 85,000 educators. So I put just as much thought into crafting this weekly written message to my email list as I do into crafting my podcast episodes. And it's entirely unique content that you won't find anywhere else online. Just go to thecornerstoneforteachers.com/subscribe and you can sign up. That's thecornerstoneforteachers.com/subscribe.